The manhwa begins with a young child named Luka, an orphan who once lived at the very bottom of the food chain in a cruel and indifferent world. But Luka made a decision. He refused to let that harsh reality define him. Unlike most heroes, he wasn't one to reach out a hand to the weak. Instead, Luka saw weakness as a liability. In his eyes, the powerless were useless, and so he took from them to survive. Food, supplies, whatever he needed. If he could take it, he did. Not out of malice, but because he believed strength justified his actions. Even at the lowest rank, Luka pushed himself relentlessly. He trained hard, he fought for every scrap of status, he refused to remain beneath the world's heel. Eventually, through sheer will and grit, he clawed his way out of the orphanage and into the army. His story follows this cold, calculating survivor as he begins to set new goals. No longer content with mere survival, Luka now fights for a place in the world, to carve out power for himself piece by piece as the story unfolds. The story follows an unknown soldier in training within the brutal Imperial Guard training camp. He stands in the midst of armed men, gunshots ringing out all around him. This wasn't madness. This was protocol. This is what it takes to become an Imperial Guard. One must overcome such hurdles. Suddenly, one of the gunshots explodes, and the trainer springs into action. With swift precision, he takes down all of his attackers in a single, fluid counterattack. Just from the corner, someone claps in approval. The masked guard trainee, stronger than most active soldiers, stood amidst the carnage. The scene is then set with a proper introduction. This is Earth, but not the one we know. In the future, technological progress brought no hope, only more efficient destruction. Humanity fell deeper into ruin as endless wars, sparked by dwindling resources, consumed the planet. Eventually, Earth was overrun by unknown alien invaders, and life there ended. A few human survivors wandered through the stars until they discovered a new planet. It was eerily similar to Earth. They named it Novus, their new home, and broadcast its coordinates across space. Scattered humans converged on Novus. Among the first discovered was the Belletto Foundation, a coalition where alien species lived among Earthlings. Next came the Accratian Empire, a militant nation of enhanced soldiers with mechanized bodies, and then the Holy Korite Alliance, whose priests wielded force energy and unbreakable mental fortitude. But there were infinite unknown resources even within Novus, and as a result, humanity once again began preparation for a war to monopolize the resources. Back at the camp, Luka stands beside his commander. The man looks at him and speaks. "You're next. Tough luck. You'll be compared to the one who just went before you. He was skilled. Now it's your turn to show His Majesty what you're capable of. Don't forget, this is an important day for you." The commander's name is Hemelles Castoria, head of the Imperial Guard. Luka, despite still being a trainee, holds firm confidence in his abilities. He steps into the training site, thinking to himself, if I want to become an Imperial Guard, I need to at least be able to dodge and block bullets. He'd survived stimulation training under extreme conditions. Now, it was time to prove himself for real. With only cheap cybernetic equipment, Luka draws his sword. The battle is about to begin. "This should only take 10 seconds, he mutters. He darts forward and immediately the first enemy's head flies clean off. The others react quickly, raising their weapons. But Luka, eyes sharp, sees this as a chance to make a memorable impression. He needs to surpass the man who went before him. He hadn't tried the move he witnessed from the trainee ever, but now he had to emulate it somehow. Gunfire erupts once again. Luka stands still for a moment, then moves. He dodges, parrying bullets mid-flight. His blade slices clean through the bullets and the enemies, one after another. Gunshots are deflected with his sword. Bodies fall swiftly, and to everyone's surprise, it's over in seconds. From the sidelines, Commander Hemelles watches, clearly impressed. Luka wipes the blood off his sword, thinking to himself as he walks out, I did it. I pushed past my limits. I'm ready. I'm Imperial Guard material now. He turns to leave, but the commander stops him. I didn't think you'd use ballistic trajectory control. That's not even in your curriculum yet. Luka replies casually, I just copied the guy who went before me. The commander narrows his eyes. That guy's from a noble house. He was taught early. You're from an orphanage. Then suddenly the commander says, I like you. I'll give you a gift. Luka stops, confused. Without warning, Hemelles plunges his fingers into Luka's eye, tearing it out. Everyone watches in horror. But Luka doesn't flinch. Hemelles grins and says to Luka, "You didn't react. You must have done great in pain tolerance training." Luka simply replies, "I'm glad you're pleased. It's just an eye. It would have been taken eventually. I'd like to request one that can predict trajectories." The commander made preparations for his request. Later, a new character enters, a young recruit named Ilay. He calls out to Luka, "You're number 32, right? I'm number 12. Mind if I come in?" Luka sits silently in his ward. "Ah, too sudden? Sorry," Ilay says, scratching the back of his neck. They're both young, just boys trained for war. Luka finally responds, "Come in." Ilay sits on Luka's bed and tried chatting. "You were amazing out there. I was impressed. You're in the wrong place if you're looking to exchange praises, young master," Luka says flatly. He can feel it. This boy is from nobility. Ilay Karthika, heir to the famous Karthika household. Trying to ease the moment, Ilay pulls a tablet from his pocket and offers it. "It'll lower your sensitivity. You'll sleep better." Though Luka responds saying he doesn't need it. Ilay presses on, "You won't train well tomorrow without rest. You know mental fortitude isn't enough." After a pause, Luka takes the pill. Swallows it. Ilay is gladdened by this. Luka thinks, "This is better than those knockoffs from the streets." "You were good too," Luka says, "though I just copied you." Ilay chuckles. "I've got a mechanical eye. I can calculate trajectories. But you did it with raw instinct," he adds. The commander must have noticed too. "That's why he gave you a mechanical eye. You're an irregular." Luka shrugs it off, saying that he just worked hard. A memory flashes of Luka's days in the hood, as he knew well that for someone like him, only pure talent and overwhelming determination could be the force driving his efforts. Ilay looks uncertain, hesitating, then says, "You passed the selection, but remember that some others didn't. Some even paid to manipulate the results." Luka nods, stating that he's aware that something like this could happen. "Yes, there's no proof, but I believe it. But you came here with no support. People like you never fail because you made it here on skill alone." Luka stares at him. A noble? Saying nobles aren't always great? He never considered that. What's this guy really trying to tell me? Luka wonders. Ilay stretches out his hand. "I think people like you are the ones who should succeed. I'll be cheering for you." Luka is caught off guard, but takes his hand and shakes it. "I plan on it," he says. This is all for the Empire. This story follows the chronicles of a boy being raised as a military weapon in the tyrannical empire of Accratia. The story continues as we see Luka and Ilay at the shooting range, honing their skills. Luka has finally received the eye implant from the commander, and he takes aim at the humanoid dummy ahead of him where he does target practice. Luka presses the button to reel it back and inspects his work. Every shot hit the head with perfect precision. Ilay glides over, whistling in admiration. "Wow, you managed to shoot all the targets square in the head. I guess the top student really is a different breed." Luka glances at the target without responding. Ilay continues. "Are you already getting used to the new eye? Isn't it unfair that you're this good with a gun when your specialty is close combat?" Luka answers flatly. "It's only natural that members of the guard are proficient with all types of weapons. Also, I don't want to hear that complaint from someone who just shot through the same hole on his target with precision." True to his words, Ilay had outperformed him. Every shot had gone through the same mark. Ilay pats Luka's head smugly. "My specialty just happens to be firearms," he says. "It's only natural." Luka narrows his eyes and tells Ilay that if he keeps being so nonchalant, he'll evidently surpass him soon. "I welcome it," Ilay replies with a smile. "Like I said before, I'm rooting for you." Luka doesn't respond. Ilay then says that the Empire needs people like Luka. These days, talent and ability are being diluted. As long as someone has status, even the powerless are considered elite. But if more irregulars like Luka started to appear, people will begin to see the difference between the truly talented and the privileged. Luka, taken aback, replies, "That it almost sounds like Ilay is criticizing the Empire's system, then threatened to report Ilay to the headquarters." Though Ilay smiles, saying that if he were really going to report him, he wouldn't have said a thing about it. He knew Luka was a good person. He walks off, though pauses briefly only to say thank you to Luka for worrying about him. Luka simply looks away and returns to his training. Later, inside a military truck, the commander stands before the trainees, addressing them. Luka and Isle will act as platoon leaders during this exercise, he announces. If anyone has an issue with that, speak now or we continue as scheduled. No one responds. The truck then halts in front of a small settlement perched atop a cliff. The commander continues, across that gorge lies a Karite outpost, illegally stationed on our territory. This mission will test your field capability. There is no need for prisoners, so he ordered them to kill everyone on sight. Isle and Luka step off the truck. This is their first real mission as Imperial Guard trainees, and Ilay is excited. This is the first time they'll be facing outsiders, so there's a bit of tension in the atmosphere. Though Luka glances around and says, there's no need to get uncomfortable by the people they see ahead of them, as this is only just a mission. There's even the senior guard stationed there who is there for supervision as well. A full-body mechanical legion soldier stands silently. They're here to supervise those, not only. They might even kill anyone who goes against the orders to not take prisoners. I agree, Eel says. Idiots unaware of their place don't belong in the Imperial Guard. Luka nods. After they stepped out, in only a matter of seconds, the entire area was engulfed in flames. Alarms rang loud from the sirens as it waited. The trainees had unleashed total chaos. As they move in, Luka thinks to himself, none of them seem armed. This should end without issue. Luka, however, spots a young boy, crying, alone, sitting by a stone amid the burning ruins. The boy looks up at him, pleading silently. Luka freezes. A child. Terrified. No resistance. A non-combatant. His thoughts spiraled. He hesitates, gripping the sword in hand. If I had a gun, he thought. The child continues to cry, but Luka tried to talk himself into the way of the soldier. I'm an Imperial Guard. I shouldn't hesitate. They're just insects draining the Empire. Then he thrusts his sword, but stops short, deliberately missing the child. Leaning close, he whispers, play dead. It's your only chance. Luka walks away, conflicted. But as he walked off, his mind races. Should I go back and finish it? What if the headquarters finds out? Then suddenly a gunfire from the rear clears through and finishes the job. Luka spins around, looking for where the bullet came from. The shot came from Eel. Shaking his head, Isle mutters, this isn't our way, Luka. Luka panics. Was he watching me? Since when? Will he report me? Though he calms himself, as he believes that Ilay won't say anything, but it would be a different story if one of the other trainees saw. Suddenly, an explosion erupts above him, where Ilay stood. A Force user stood nearby, grinning wickedly. Go to hell, you accretians. Luka is stunned. Did he cause the blast? He looks up again. Thankfully, Ilay is unharmed and leaps down. But the Force user strikes again, this time hitting Isle directly to the ground, his body now torn apart to a mere joke. Luka recognizes the signature. Force energy. This man is a Force user. The attacker screams. This isn't a military base. It was a civilian settlement. They were just trying to live. Luka hesitates. Did the commander know? Would Isle have acted differently if they had this information? But it's too late for questions. The battle begins. The ground explodes beneath his feet as the Force user attacks relentlessly. Luka dodges, keeping up the speed, thinking to himself that he prefers a battle of attrition, but if he keeps moving at this pace, his body will give out first. Still, he charges. The Force user doesn't expect it. As they clash, Luka lands a devastating blow, but the enemy retaliates. His hand crashes into Luka's helmet with a force bomb, nearly killing him. And then he sees Luka's face through the wreckage. A child, the man gasps. They're sending children into war? In that moment of shock, Luka finishes him off. He stands over the Force user's body, panting. That attack, if it had landed cleanly, I'd be dead. He stares down at the man, thinking, why didn't he kill me when he had the chance? Behind him, the settlement soldiers. Luka watches the wreckage, the pain, the silence. He swallows hard. This is all for the Empire, he tells himself. This is what it means to be an Imperial Guard. The manhwa continues in the accratian hospital recovery room shortly after the partly concluded field operation. Luka is submerged in a healing pool. From a nearby tub, Ilay calls out, Luka, how does it feel to almost die? Speak for yourself, Ilay. Luka responds flatly. You're the one who almost died. Ilay laughs at the reality. Well, I've got new arms and legs this time, he says with a grin. Luka sighs, as even he had to change his back. It was destroyed in the battle. Now he's got titanium bones and artificial skin. They both knew that full mechanical bodies were in their future anyways. Piece by piece, they would eventually become machines regardless. Ilay's tone shifts. The boss probably knew what happened out there, he says. Referring to what the Force user had said earlier, he was sure they knew. Though it was a test. Yeah, Luka agrees. Our seniors didn't step in. They must have figured we could handle it. The memory lingers. Luka reflects silently on how close they came to dying. The Force user had been capable, far more than any trainee should have faced, but he wondered why he hesitated. Maybe because they were just kids in his eyes. Suddenly, Ilay interrupts his thoughts. Luka, he says, why did you close your eyes when you attacked that Korean girl? Why didn't you finish her off? Tell me why. Luka rolls over, visibly annoyed. You talk too much. Did you get a new tongue too? He said. Though he responds regrettably, saying that it'll never happen again. The scene shifts. A high-ranking officer stands before the assembled trainees. You've now completed 2 of your 4 years in Imperial Guard training, he says. There are newer batches beneath you now. Be a model to them. Especially you two, Luka and Ilay, as the top 1 and 2 aim to become centurions. Keep going for the glory of the Empire and its citizens. Yes, sir, they echo in unison. The structure of the Imperial Guard is simple. 1,000 guardsmen divided into 10 centuries. Each is commanded by a centurion, and above them all stands the Chief Centurion, the commander of the entire force. That Chief Centurion also personally leads the first century. After the speech, the officer walks off, leaving the trainees behind. Much later, on the training grounds, Luka and Ilay are seen sparring. Ilay throws punches with increasing speed, but Luka dodges with ease, weaving through the assault. Luka thinks to himself he's gotten stronger with those new arms, but still it's not enough. Luka feints low, knocking Ilay off balance, then stops his fist inches from Ilay's face. That's 124 rounds now, he says. You haven't won once. Ilay sighs as he was outmatched again. That evening under the night sky, they sit outside together. Ilay was nagging, I really thought I had you that time. Though Luka knew, if new body parts were all it took to get stronger, then what's the point of training? You've become more rigid lately, Ilay says. It seems the Centurion speech got to you. Of course it did, Luka answers. If I ever serve as an Imperial Guard, I'll be welcomed anywhere. He grips that thought tightly. Ilay gives him a sideways glance. You're already in a place where your birth doesn't matter. Why not just relax a little? Luka responds calmly, saying, unlike you, I have no place to return to. I have to keep climbing or it's over. Then turning to Ilay, he asks, you have talent, but you lack drive, so why do you want to become a guardsman? He wondered. Ilay smiles. He looks up at the stars and says that he'd wanted to be a scholar, an archaeologist. He wanted to study ancient arcane civilizations. Then why didn't you? Luka asked. Thoughts like that are banned, Ilay says, voice calm. His house had produced generals for generations. They'd never allow it from him. So you're sad you can't do what you want? Luka scoffs, calling him a spoiled child. There are people in the slums who don't know if they'll survive the night, while some are thankful just to eat. Ilay knew Luka would respond in that tone. Imagine having to share a secret like that, but get a response like that in return. Calm down, Luka, he says, playing it off. Luka warns him, someone could take what you said as a criticism of the Empire. If it's reported, you'll be ruined. But you won't report it, Ilay says with a quiet smile, just like I kept your secret. Luka's expression hardens. I hesitated because my opponent was a non-combatant. Even if you weren't there, I would have gone back for the kill. I'm loyal to the Empire. The Empire recognized my talent. Its enemies are my enemies, and you're no exception, Ilay. Ilay grins, stands, and jumps off the platform. Liar, he says. If your loyalty ran that deep, you'd have already killed me. It's not that deep. Don't push yourself too hard, Luka, and then he walks off. Idiot, Luka mutters, annoyed. 3 years pass like sand in an hourglass. Now, in a wide, uninhabited neutral zone, the trainees arrive at an ancient site. This is an arcane site, Ilay says, touching the platform. It's millions of years old. He turns to Luka. Isn't this cool? There were civilizations exploring the stars before we even existed. Luka gives no response. Only a warning. Don't get careless. This reconnaissance mission is still part of our training. If we run into another force, we'll have to fight. Ilay shrugs. Even if we can't win, I'm sure someone from the guard will help us. Suddenly, another voice chimes in. The present exists because of the past. it says. That record allows us to predict the future. It makes sense for people to study history. The speaker is Claude Vermonis, an accratian Imperial Guard trainee. He looks at Luka. "Can I ask you something?" he says. He smiles. "I think I like you. Are you seeing anyone?" Luka immediately takes a stance. "Come one step closer and I'll consider you a threat." Claude raises his hands, laughing. "No need to be so tense. If you weren't seeing anyone, I was going to introduce you to my sister." "I'm from an orphanage," Luka says. "And whether from an orphanage or nobility," Claude replies, "you'll probably end up as my superior soon. Think about it." Ilay appears and playfully elbows Luka. "Popular guy, huh?" "Shut up," Luka mutters. Suddenly a strange sound echoes across the site. They're all tensed up, weapons drawn, eyes sharp. They spot a figure near a crystalline pillar. "A Karit paladin," someone whispers. The paladin spots them. In an instant, his spear levitates using telekinesis and hurls forward like a missile. "Run," Luka yells. But it's too late. The spear hits its mark clean in a swift motion, Claude Vermonis, his blood splattering across the ancient stone. And so begins the brutal encounter. The impact of the spear slammed into the pillar, and the paladin immediately retracted his weapon, pulling it back with a wave of aura. Luka stood over Claude's mangled body, still shaking from the shock. He thought he'd seen a glow, but Claude's upper body was completely gone. Fear gripped Luka, gnawing deep into his core. Even his mechanical eye began malfunctioning, riddled with miscalculations. He stared at the paladin standing before him, frozen, helpless. Then, from behind, a barrage of bullets flew past him, and voices rang out. "Get it together, Luka! Don't just stand there! Fight! Stall for time!" Their words snapped him back. "They're right," he thought. "Even if I tried to run, there's no escaping this situation. The only way out is to fight." He exhaled slowly, calming his nerves, and began to count down in his mind. Just a dozen seconds. If we can hold on, the Imperial Guard member observing from afar will intervene. And so, the trainees stood outmatched and terrified against a paladin in a desperate battle against time. The paladin sent his spear flying again. It was too fast. It struck Luka's mask, slicing across his cheek, and circled back. He barely dodged the next attack, but the spear came again. Luka turned, fear surging again. "Am I gonna die here?" he wondered. "Can I really hold out a dozen seconds against this monster?" Then a voice echoed in his mind. His commander's. "You look like a pig that knows it's about to be slaughtered. Show fear, turn your back, and all you'll get is a bullet to the back. If the enemy swings, you swing back. Weaklings don't belong in the Imperial Guard." Those words surged through him like a storm. "I must fight." He threw himself toward the incoming spear. Suddenly, as he struck the spear, the weapon veered off course, striking something else and exploding. Ilay's voice called out to him as his own blade clattered to the ground. Luka stood still, breathing heavy. 6 minutes. "I've lasted 6 minutes," he thought, his arms hanging limp. "I can't use my hands anymore." But I blocked that spear. The paladin rose again, this time raising his sword, unleashing aura slashes. Luka's right hand was sliced off clean from the impact. Behind him, several other trainees were hit as well, falling under the same technique. Only Ilay remained unscathed, though one of his arms had also been severed. Luka looked back, realizing he wasn't even aiming for him. He targeted the ones behind me. The paladin charged forward, intent on finishing Luka and the rest in one final decisive blow. Frozen in fear, Luka could only scream as he forced himself forward, his last act of desperation. And then, he came. A figure standing far off suddenly shot into action, dashing through the battlefield like a missile. With perfect precision, he reached Luka just in time, his hand grabbing the paladin's head before the final strike landed. Relief washed over Luka's face. A soldier had arrived. He could rest. The soldier drove the paladin's head into the earth with rocket-powered force, dragging it across the ground as he launched him toward the pillar. The impact shook the earth beneath them. Luka, overwhelmed and exhausted, collapsed to his knees. He was saved. But it wasn't over. The paladin, bloodied and damaged, rose again, his body pulsing with wild aura, unwilling to meet his end easily. The dark-armored soldier turned, eyes narrowing. The battle wasn't finished yet. Just then, the Imperial Guard stepped forward, drawing a sword from his back and pointing it at the paladin. Around the corner, Luka watched silently, knowing that the true battle was about to unfold. An Imperial Guard, wielding the weapon of the Empire Legion, against a holy knight of Karit, a master of the Force. Who would win? The paladin rose with his sword, striking first. The Imperial Guard met his blow without flinching. It was a savage clash of titans, neither side giving in. They collided again and again, the force of their strikes echoing through the battlefield. Their duel rose into the air, moving so fast that Luka couldn't keep up. His enhanced eye failed to follow the trajectory of their weapons. All he could do was watch and hope. Can I ever reach this level of power as an Imperial Guard, he wondered. But right now, his only wish was simple. Please let our side win. If the guard falls, I won't survive either. Then, in a sudden twist, the paladin shattered the Imperial Guard's sword. But before he could capitalize, the guard grabbed the paladin's head with brutal force, activating the boosters in his arm and slamming the paladin down with full might. The battle paused, just for a moment, but something was wrong. Luka saw the twitching hand of the paladin still moving, and then the spear. The same spear, embedded behind Luka, began to rise. A sharp realization struck him. The Imperial Guard doesn't understand how fast the spear could move. He won't react in time. Luka looked back, panic setting in. If the guard dies now, so would he. He acted. In a desperate move, Luka flung his leg toward the spear, sacrificing it to alter its course. The high-speed weapon grazed through his limb, completely shattering it. But his gamble worked. The spear's trajectory shifted just enough. As the spear surged toward the distracted Imperial Guard, the paladin tried to restrain him, gripping the guard's sword arm to keep him still. But in that final moment, the guard crushed the paladin's skull into the earth with terrifying force, silencing him at last. Silence followed as Luka collapsed to the ground, breathing heavily. His thoughts were a blur. What just happened? Who survived? He could barely move. Then, footsteps. A figure cloaked in black approached, his voice calm. Good work, trainee. I was able to take down the knight, thanks to you. Did you suffer an abdominal wound? Luka coughed. I got hit trying to dodge his force slash. I'll assist you, the guard replied. Let's return to base. Luka looked up and froze in horror. The guard's head was gone, swiped clean off. You're alive, but you don't have a brain, he muttered. How is that possible? Are you a machine or a human? The Imperial Guard paused, confused. Slowly he raised a hand to feel his head, but nothing was there. A guttural scream erupted from him as he fell to his knees. Luka stared, stunned. This is what I've been striving to become, a monster like this? But his thoughts faded. He had lost too much blood. His body could only tremble as the cold set in. Will I survive? He wondered. Then, a voice cut through the scene. Ilay? Luka turned his head weakly. Ilay stood nearby, battered but alive. You're still breathing, Ilay said. Luka smiled faintly. So are you. They were both broken, but still here. The paladin had finally fallen. Sitting on the ground beside him, Ilay asked, How bad are your wounds? I'm dying, Luka said bluntly. But tell me, what do you plan to do now? He looked at Ilay, then beyond him. The life you always wanted. It's out there. You can still have it, Luka said. Though Ilay didn't respond, Luka urged him again. Go. What you seek doesn't exist in the Empire. He said he'll be fine. Reinforcements were already on their way, and once they arrive, we'll have to return. So go, Ilay. Ilay sighed and slowly stood up. At that moment, nothing else mattered. He had come from wealth, from privilege, strength, fame. Any citizen of the Empire would envy him. I'll never understand you, Ilay, Luka thought, but when he talked about his dreams, that was the brightest he'd ever seen Ilay shine. A small smile formed on Luka's lips. Suddenly, pain exploded through his side. He cried out, surprised. What are you doing? He shouted. Ilay stood over him, applying pressure to his wound, trying to stop the bleeding. I saw you acting like this, Ilay said, and I thought you might actually die if I don't do something. He looked away. There's no way he could live guilt-free if he'd left Luka to die like this. Idiot, Luka muttered, sighing. And there they were, two broken soldiers. As Ilay tended to Luka's wounds, luckily, almost immediately, the rescue ship appeared in the sky, just above them. The manhwa continues as Luka is seen sitting in a recovery room at the accratian hospital, quietly reading a book. Suddenly, Ilay appeared over him, startling him. Are you looking at new parts? Ilay asked, eyeing the magazine in Luka's hand. I'd recommend the F-24 race model. Its partition period is short, so you'll be back in the field sooner. It should perform way better than what you're using now. Ilay, stop showing up out of nowhere like that, Luka snapped. Ilay grinned. Did I surprise you? After returning to the Empire and completing their mission, Luka had been summoned by several departments for investigation. They wanted to discuss the incident involving the deaths of 3 cadets and 1 Imperial guard, the tragic encounter with the Korit Paladin. Although Luka had assumed they were digging deeper into that case, it turned out he had been called for something else entirely. As Ilay sat beside him, he casually asked, "By the way, did you hear? Seems like an artifact was discovered at that site we visited. There's already a lot of debate over who owns it." Luka's eyes narrowed. "I knew it. That floating cube. It's the cause of all this." "So who's taking it?" he asked. Ilay shrugged. "They're assembling a retrieval team composed only of specialists. If the Holy Alliance refuses to surrender the historic site and artifact, things might escalate into war. If the Empire ends up fighting the Khorites, the Belatos would just sit back and profit from the chaos," he added. "That's why small-scale battles are popping up everywhere." Luka exhaled through his nose. "I'm not interested in politics. I just want to follow orders and fight. That's what an Imperial Guard is meant to do." He remembered how, when reporting the strange incident involving the decapitated guard, the captain brushed it off as nothing more than a phantom phenomenon. Residual signals. But Luka wasn't convinced. The Imperial Guard reacted even after death. That wasn't just lingering energy. That wasn't a phantom phenomenon. There are still unanswered questions. Later that week, Luka visited the center created for cadets to meet friends and family. As an orphan from a nursery school, he never expected to find anyone waiting for him in the waiting room. To his surprise, seated across the table, was a beautiful young woman, Lillian Ramones. Why is Claude's sister here? He wondered. Is she going to question me about Claude's death? After all, I was the leader during that mission. As if reading his thoughts, her voice cut through the silence. If you think I'm here to blame you for my brother's death, don't worry. The moment Claude became a member of the Imperial Guard, our family accepted that this kind of news would come, one day. They sat together, speaking over tea. I'm here because my brother talked about you a lot, Lillian continued. He said you were talented. He even asked if I'd be interested in meeting you. I'm sure you've heard about my background, she said, smiling, but I'd prefer we skip all the formalities. Luka frowned. It almost sounds like you're interested in me. Are you opposed to this meeting? She asked softly. I don't even know you, Lillian, Luka said. Then let's start getting to know each other, she offered. Luka, ever perceptive, questioned, Why me? Isn't my dead brother's wish enough of a reason? She said. Besides, a relationship with me would be good for you. Most people would envy your position. And she was right. Luka had no logical reason to refuse. Marrying into nobility, especially to someone like Lillian, would open doors. It was the kind of golden opportunity he had trained his entire life to seize. But for some reason, it felt too easy, too convenient, and that unsettled him. I have to refuse, he said. Her expression shifted in surprise as Luka stood from the table. Goodbye, he said as he turned and walked away. Once he had mocked Ilay for trying to leave the Empire despite his privileged background, but now Luka realized he too had just made a decision based purely on emotion. She'll take this as an insult, he thought. She's a noble after all. He hoped it wouldn't cause trouble for him in the near future. Suddenly, a warm hand grabbed his wrist. He turned. Lillian had stopped him. Let's just start as friends. Is that okay? She said. This isn't what I meant. Luka began, irritated, but she simply walked off with a gentle smile. I'll come visit again. See you next time. Luka sighed. She's going to be hard to shake off. The scene shifts to the accratian training grounds. Luka stood before a well-built man in the center of the physical training room. The man raised an eyebrow. I never expected you'd come to me. This was Kinuan, the Imperial Guard's combat instructor. I'm here now, Luka said firmly. I want to learn from you. Kinuan gave him a hard look. If it's fighting, there's not much I can teach you. You're already far ahead of most cadets. But there are others even stronger, Luka thought. That won't do. I'm not satisfied with just being the best among cadets, Luka said, voice steady. Kinuan shrugged. No need to rush. Growth takes time. Unlike most instructors, Kinuan wasn't intimidating. He didn't wield powerful tech or enhanced gear. His augment was a low-power, everyday type, primitive compared to the advanced ones used now. Still, Luka knew. If he can't beat someone like Kinuan, he'll never survive another fight against a Karaite paladin. Thanks for the opportunity, Luka said, stepping into position. Without waiting, he lunged forward and threw a punch, fast and precise. Kinuan easily parried, but Luka followed with a flurry of attacks, moving like a machine. Just as he prepared for the final strike, Kinuan gently graced him by the hand, just a brush, and Luka flew. He soared over Kinuan's shoulder and landed hard, barely catching himself. What the hell? Why am I in the air? Gritting his teeth, Luka rose, refusing to stay down. He charged again, only for Kinuan to repeat the motion. Luka hit the ground a second time, dazed and breathless. What is going on? He wondered. Kinuan walked toward him slowly. You failed to gauge your opponent's strength, he said. Worse, you allowed your mind to wander. He crouched beside Luka. Why are you even in this state right now? What are you trying to prove? Kinuan stared at Luka, who was still sprawled on the floor. Why are you in such a hurry, Luka? Luka blinked, stunned. What just happened? From his angle, his fist should have landed cleanly on Kinuan's chin. So why had he been the one thrown? But then he remembered the exact moment Kinuan touched his arm. His vision distorted, his body staggered as if he'd lost control. No, not lost control. The kinetic energy he'd sent into Kinuan had been reflected right back at him. Sitting up, Luka asked, what was that just now? Kinuan dusted himself off and replied, it's a self-defense method I use. Can I learn it? Luka asked. Kinuan raised his hand, pausing. You still want to learn a technique that puts me in this condition? Blood dripped from Kinuan's nose, quietly pattering on the floor. But Luka wasn't fazed. There's always a price for shortcuts, he said. Kinuan gave him a long look, then nodded. They sat down together near the training board, their legs crossed in quiet meditation. So, Kinuan said, what did you learn from that fight? It felt like I'd been enchanted, Luka admitted. My body moved on its own. I lost control. Kinuan nodded slowly. That technique is called arkies Victima, or more formally, the arkies combat method. Luka blinked. Isn't that the same method those mongrels use? What you just showed me, it's impressive enough to be standardized for the military. They considered it, Kinuan replied, but there are 3 glaring problems. First, it's incredibly hard to learn. Second, there's cognitive backlash, disorientation, memory static, and brain stress are side effects. Luka leaned forward, unfazed. And the third? Kinuan didn't answer. I don't care, Luka said. If it can make me stronger, I'll take the risk. Kinuan stood, voice firmer. That's not up to you. You're already an asset to the Empire. Do you know how much they've spent on you? Luka stood too, emotions building, wanting to shout, but the words caught in his throat. Kinuan turned sharply. Then answer me this. If learning arkies Victima ruins your brain, can you promise me that you'll stop using it? Luka hesitated. He knew that if he lied, he'd be caught. I can't promise that, he said, but I'll try my best. Kinuan placed a hand on Luka's shoulder. I like your honesty. Luka collapsed once more to the ground, winded. From now on, Kinuan said, walking away, always anticipate my attacks. That way you'll survive anything. It was clear Kinuan had decided to teach him arkies Victima. Months passed, and Luka now sparred with Kinuan daily. One afternoon, Ilay met him on the walkway. Hey bro, are you even sleeping? Ilay asked, concerned. Luka's eyes looked dead. Just busy, bro. Nothing major. He thought to himself, Kinuan never really taught him the arkies method. He just fought him. Again and again, forced him to observe, to adapt. Most martial systems train you to master a technique. The arkies method, though, it forced you to turn everything you already knew into something greater. It was less a skill and more a complete reconfiguration of combat thought. The ultimate in reactive adaptability. How was your mission? Luka asked Ilay. Boring. Luka narrowed his eyes. You seem off. Ilay shrugged. It's probably all the careful surveillance lately. Ever since that last incident, things have been tense, and the chief centurion hasn't been seen for a while. Though that's not why, Ilay added. I heard something from my family. Luka raised a brow. If the chief has to step in, it's probably a rebellion. Ilay nodded. Yeah, some groups have been plotting. Luka clenched his jaw. We're already at war with the Karaite Alliance, and now some idiot wants a civil war? Ilay's gaze was calm. If you brush off problems like this as simple stupidity, you'll probably rot from the inside out. That hit a nerve. Luka slammed Ilay into a wall, fist raised. I warned you, he growled. I can overlook you wanting to leave the Empire, but if you turn into its enemy, I can't let you walk. Ilay didn't flinch. Calm down, Luka. Luka let go and stepped back. Don't say things that make people suspect you. He didn't want to see Ilay's name on a rebel list. Ilay smiled weakly. I know. I only said it here because you're the only one I trust. You're saving me in your own way. Luka sighed. Ilay offered to treat Luka at lunch, but Luka refused and told Ilay not to speak to him. He already had plans. Then he walked away. Later that day, in Accratia's lower sector, Luka walked with Kinuan through the narrow alleys and dusty streets. Haven't been here in a while, huh? Kinuan said. Feels familiar, doesn't it? Luka had thought he'd never return to the lower sector after becoming a trainee. He didn't want to breathe the same air as the hoodlums who raised him. He didn't expect Kinuan to bring him here when he told him to prepare plans. As they walked through the alleys, nothing had changed. The air in the lower sector was thick and foul. The city above was powered by geothermal energy from magma below. Its heat and waste were all dumped here where the poor lived. Back when he was younger, Luka had breathed in this rot every day. It made him desperate to escape, to rise above, and now, being back here only irritated him. Kinuan turned down a side alley. Luka followed, and they entered the black market. He noted that some kids from his childhood never came back after wandering into these places out of curiosity. Kinuan, he knows this area better than I do, Luka realized. Strange, for a man who's been an Imperial Guard for decades. The instructor had told Luka to wear low-output prosthetics for the trip. That alone made Luka suspicious. He was unsure of what Kinuan planned for the day. Then Kinuan said, "Get ready." They had arrived. Ahead, 2 guards blocked their path. The voice cut through, "Halt." "The spectator entrance is that way." Kinuan replied, "I need to speak with your boss." The guard asked, "You know Aleph?" "Not really," Kinuan shrugged. "Just wanted to meet him." One of the guards scoffed. "You crazy old! Get out!" But before he could act, Luka dashed forward. In one fluid motion, he twisted the guard's wrist, disarmed him, and slammed him to the ground. Then he pointed the gun at the second guard, his tone calm. "Don't move." The second guard raised his hands. Kinuan chuckled. "Seems like you understand the situation. Bring Aleph, right now." The second guard lifted his partner from the ground and guided them inside. As they followed, Luka glanced sideways. "What would you have done if I wasn't fast enough?" Kinuan smirked, knowing he would have found another way. "What is this place?" Luka asked. Kinuan turned to him, expression sharp with excitement. "This," he said, "is the hottest place in the whole Empire." He called it the Colosseum. By now, they had successfully entered the building. Inside was a vast, airy room. Silence lingered in the space, with 2 bodyguards flanking a large man seated in the center, undoubtedly Aleph, the man Kinuan had come to find. Kinuan stepped forward confidently. "Put this guy in the match," he said, motioning to Luka, adding, "I don't need a cut, and it's all fine if he dies fighting." Luka's thoughts churned, so that's why he told me to come with a low-output body. Aleph exhaled smoke slowly and replied with an indifferent no. He flicked the rest of his cigarette toward Kinuan. But before the ash could reach Kinuan, Luka caught it midair. In that instant, the atmosphere shifted. The men behind Aleph suddenly drew their guns, aiming at Kinuan. "You seem confused," Aleph said coldly. "We didn't let you in to hear your request. You were called here because it's easy to dispose of corpses in this place." It's a bluff, Luka thought. If he really had no intention of listening, we'd already be dead. He began simulating every possibility. 3 men directly ahead, 2 more by the door. First, flip the table to use as a shield. Then, burst through it, distract them, and land a punch directly to Aleph's face. Grab his gun. Use him as cover. Take out the rest. Reinforcements come in, leap over them, take them down before they can react. Controlled chaos, all in under 10 seconds. But before Luka could act, Kinuan spoke, calm and commanding. "What happened to the previous owner?" he asked casually. Aleph smirked. "You knew Torah?" "Ah, he's no more. He got caught rigging matches." "So you killed Torah," Kinuan replied, "and took over the Colosseum." Aleph laughed. Kinuan continued. "Torah killed the boss before him too. That's just how it is in the streets." Suddenly, Aleph stood and pointed a gun straight at Kinuan. "How the hell do you know so much?" he snapped. Kinuan didn't flinch. His voice turned low and threatening. "Aleph, if I were you, I'd sit down, unless you want to end up next to Torah." Aleph hesitated, stunned by the sheer force of Kinuan's presence. Slowly, he sat back down and motioned for his men to lower their weapons. "So all I need to do is throw the brat in a match, right?" Aleph asked, eyeing Luka. His gaze swept Luka's body. Organic limbs, non-combat prosthetics. He underestimated him because of how he looked. Aleph leaned back and agreed, but asked for something in return. Kinuan smiled faintly. "I know where Tora kept his safe," he said plainly, "and I know the key is the eye you stole from him." Aleph's expression darkened. "How much do you know?" "I'm just a ghost of the past," Kinuan replied. "Don't worry about me." Aleph tried regaining his edge. Luka glanced at Aleph, then back at Kinuan. He took control of the entire room without lifting a finger. He realized that he still had a lot to learn from Kinuan. The scene shifts to the Colosseum waiting chamber. Luka and Kinuan stood at the entrance, watching the bustle ahead. "It's in 2 hours," Kinuan said. "Get warmed up." Luka turned to him. "What's in Tora's safe that made Aleph change so fast?" Kinuan smirked but replied, "His hidden treasure. Enough to change everything." Luka's eyes narrowed. "What would you have done if a fight broke out back there?" "Ah, so that's what you're curious about," Kinuan said, nodding. "Okay, we'll talk about that after you win." He pulled up a screen tab. "This is your opponent, name's Gabriel. They call him the Steel Fist." Lucas studied the image, unease rising in his gut. "The Colosseum's full of freaks using illegal augmentations," Kinuan continued. "They trade lifespan for power. Gabriel's probably the kind who doesn't care if he dies." Lucas stayed silent, staring. Kinuan turned to him. "Listen closely. This is the foundation of the arkies combat method." Luka nodded. "What is it?" Kinuan's voice dropped, almost a whisper. "Be satisfied with what you have, that's all." Luka blinked. "That's it?" Kinuan nodded, then explained in more detail. "Water doesn't lose, it adapts. It becomes what it needs to flow." He looked Luka in the eye. "I recognized your potential the day you deflected bullets with no predictor. You surprised me." He tapped Luka on the shoulder. Luka murmured, "You're giving me too much credit." "Maybe," Kinuan replied. "This might be the last time I see you, but good luck." Luka looked at him, then smiled faintly. They shared a quiet, knowing look. The crowd roared. The announcer's voice thundered across the arena as he welcomed Luka with the stage name, Good Boy. He dares to challenge the Steel Fist, Gabriel, in his very first match. Will the boy even go home today? Booing echoed throughout the Colosseum. The spectators didn't care who Luka was. They wanted carnage. "A brat still sucking his mother's tits," one shouted. "Who let him in here?" Luka stood quietly in the ring, soaking in their hatred. "They really want to see my limbs torn off, my face crushed," he smiled. "Not bad. It's good." His gaze swept across the roaring masses, his lips curled. It was his moment to shine. The crowd suddenly erupted into chants as Luka's opponent entered the arena. "Gabriel! Gabriel!" The roar grew deafening. The name echoed through the Colosseum like thunder. Gabriel glanced around, wearing a look of mild disbelief. "I got matched up with a brat like this?" he muttered, walking toward Luka with casual arrogance. "Why would Aleph set me up with this kid?" Luka studied him quietly. Not only are his limbs from different manufacturers, he's completely neglected symmetry and structural balance. His whole frame's screaming from augmentation fatigue. He noted the raw patches of skin where flesh met metal, red, inflamed, possibly infected. He probably can't even sleep without painkillers. But he's strong. Dangerous. Gabriel stepped closer, his head tilted with a smirk. "What are you staring at?" he asked, eyes scanning Luka's face. "Not bad," he said. "Maybe I'll have you serve me at night. I'll even go easy on you for that face." Luka didn't flinch. His voice came out flat and sharp. Makes sense. You'll need a servant after this. You'll be crippled by the end of the match." The smirk vanished. Gabriel's jaw clenched. Up in the booth, Aleph's voice thundered through the arena mic. "Let the match begin." The Colosseum rumbled as the crowd screamed. "Destroy him! Kill the kid! Crush his head!" Kinuan sat quietly among the onlookers, unmoving, his eyes fixed only on Luka. The match began fast. Gabriel exploded forward. His punch was a blur of metal and hatred. Luka narrowly weaved past the strike and retaliated with a kick to Gabriel's face, but Gabriel only laughed. "Is that it?" Damn, Luka thought. If I had my full gear, that kick would have caved in his skull. He leapt backward, keeping distance. This arena's too tight. I can't afford to just dodge forever. Gabriel charged again, fists hammering out with deadly intent. Luka slipped past blow after blow, but every counterstrike he landed felt useless. His hits lacked weight, and the crowd only roared louder, drunk on bloodlust. What did Kinuan mean by bringing me here? He said to be satisfied with what I have, but I have nothing. And yet, through the chaos, a single thought surfaced. Wait, I still have my eyes. I can still think. He drew a sharp breath and realigned his focus. The arkies method. It's not about overpowering, it's about understanding, using what I already have. He locked in. Every twitch of Gabriel's shoulders, every minor shift in his footwork, it all came into focus. He's strong but clunky. Every move is telegraphed. Suddenly, Luka's motions changed. Cleaner, sharper. He flowed like water, impossible to pin down, yet everywhere at once. From the stance, Kinuan's mouth curled into a slow, approving grin. Genius, he thought. He's grasping it. The arkies combat method. A spectator screamed, "Gabriel, how the hell are you losing to a brat?" The once frenzied crowd started to quiet down, confused. Luka's attacks weren't just evasive, they were dismantling Gabriel's rhythm. I can read every move, Luka realized. Every breath, every twitch. It's like watching slowed footage. I've never felt more alive. Then, he took a risk. As Gabriel swung for a punch, Luka barely grazed his wrist, using his momentum against him. Gabriel's own power launched him into a spin, completely off balance. Luka's foot met his ribs with brutal precision, launching him across the arena. Luka grinned. This is getting exciting. This is new, and I like it. Gabriel groaned, kneeling as blood dripped from his mouth. I don't know what kind of sorcery you used, but your attacks are still weak. He lunged again, teeth bared. Luka sidestepped. Gabriel's fist slammed into the arena wall with a sickening crack. You think I need raw strength? Luka murmured coldly. If I lack that, I'll use something else. He slipped behind Gabriel, grabbed his head, and in a single fluid twist, spun it a full 360 degrees. There was a horrible click, then silence. Gabriel dropped like a puppet with its strings cut. The Colosseum froze. Mouths hung open. The bloodthirsty chants had died. Only a hushed gasp filled the air. Luka turned toward the crowd, his breathing steady. All of you wanted me dead. All of you waited to see me bleed. But it didn't go their way. It was my win. And as he stood in the center of the blood-stained ring, something inside him surged. I'll keep climbing higher until even their loudest screams can't reach me. Luka stood over Gabriel's collapsed body, the weight of victory pressing more heavily on his mind than his opponent's defeat. Only in the controlled confines of the Colosseum had he been able to dissect Gabriel's pattern and dominate the match. He pulled the hood of his jacket over his head and walked off the stage with a composed, almost eerie silence. Near the exit, Kinuan waited. Nice work, good boy, Kinuan said with a rare smile. Welcome to your induction into Arkies Victima. Luka responded quietly. I've realized something. Accepting your situation doesn't mean surrendering to it. Kinuan nodded, handing him a credit chip. That's your payout, he said. Then added, also Gabriel's hospital bill. It's smart to show kindness, but only if you can afford the consequences. I'm not trying to be noble, Veste Luka muttered. I want to be a soldier, a warrior. Kinuan gently patted him on the head. Still green when it comes to people. This isn't charity, it's strategy. One day, that debt might return, paid back with interest. He glanced toward the shadows of the Colosseum. Today I cashed in my investment in Torah. Never forget, a soldier creates his own favorable terrain. As Kinuan walked off, Luka remained there for a while, eyes distant. I misjudged him, he thought. I assumed he helped me because I was talented, or because we came from the same gutter. But now he understood. One day, Kinuan would call on that debt, and when he did, Luka might not be able to refuse. Later, we see Gabriel laying on the hospital bed, patched up and fuming. A doctor stood nearby, flipping through his diagnostics. Your augment setup draws too much power. It's already causing minor malfunctions. Next time could be full system failure. Gabriel grunted. Those new models are overpriced trash. This isn't a joke, the doctor said. You cobbled that gear together out of desperation, I get it, but you need upgrades. Gabriel snapped. If I could afford that, I would have already done it. The doctor offered an emergency subsidy. Gabriel refused. From outside, Luka had been listening. He stepped into the room. Gabriel, he said calmly. Looking energetic, I see. Gabriel's eyes flared. You bastard, Luka held his gaze. I warned you. I said I'd cripple you if you underestimated me. But then Kinuan's words echoed in his mind. Luka stepped past Gabriel and addressed the doctor instead. He handed over the chip Kinuan had given him. Will this cover the cost of his repairs? The doctor blinked, scanned it, and nodded. More than enough. Good, Luka said. Gabriel stared, stunned. What the hell? Why are you paying for me? Luka shrugged. Because I felt like it. Gabriel was silent for a long moment. Then, with disbelief. So, Good Boy isn't just your stage name, huh? He straightened, then asked, What's your name? Luka. Gabriel nodded slowly. If you ever need something, I owe you one. Luka didn't reply, but inside he thought helping him didn't feel so bad after all. Back at the accratian training grounds, Luka and Ilay stood in the sparring arena. Ilay lunged forward, aiming a kick at Luka's face. Luka pivoted effortlessly and redirected the strike using a familiar movement, one he'd learned under Kinuan. Ilay crashed into the mat, wheezing. Ow, that's new? Wait, is that the arkies method? Yeah, Luka nodded. Ilay frowned. Isn't that like thug fighting? Glass shards in your fists, sand in the eyes? Luka chuckled. That's what Kinuan said too. Ilay groaned. With moves like that, I don't think I'll beat you again. Luka smiled faintly. You're still the only one here who gives me a challenge. That's enough. His thoughts drifted back to the Colosseum. That match shattered everything I knew. It compressed all my training into something sharp, something pure. Ilay looked at Luka for a long moment, noticing a rare peace in his expression. Ilay then asked Luka for some help on something later, and Luka accepted. Later, in the Imperial Guard trainee barracks visiting room, Luka sat stiffly across from Lillian Ramones. Ilay sat beside him, looking incredibly guilty. Tea sat untouched on the table. You set me up? Luka asked flatly. Ilay shrugged. The Ramones and my family go way back. I couldn't say no. Lillian cut in. I've sent dozens of visit requests. Why have you been ignoring me? Luka sighed. Because I hoped you'd understand silence as a refusal. Ilay muttered. Luka, man, that was cold. Shut up. Lillian didn't flinch. What do you hate so much about me? It's not you, Luka said. I just don't have time for this. I'm an orphan. If I screw up even once, I lose everything. Lillian leaned forward. Then isn't aligning with me useful? You don't get it, Luka snapped. If I depend on your title, that means I never had real strength to begin with. But you're close to Ilay. Ilay's my comrade, Luka said firmly. Not because of his name, but because he's him. Lillian nodded slowly. So, you want me to stop visiting? Luka stood. Exactly. He walked out. Later, Ilay caught up. You didn't have to be so brutal. She wouldn't back off otherwise, Luka said, but why do you dislike her so much? Luka paused. Because I don't understand her. A noble girl chasing after a gutter rat like me just because her dead brother said something? That's not normal. Ilay said softly. So you're scared? Luka's eyes narrowed. If you like her, Ilay, stop pretending and take your shot. Ilay blinked. What makes you think that? Luka smirked. Your eyes, your breath, your nerves. Arkies Victima sharpens everything. I see things. He turned and walked off. I'm not interested, but you might be, so stop hesitating. Ilay watched him disappear into the corridor. That kind of thing, he thought to himself, feels impossible for someone like me. The manhwa continues within the smoky borders of the Accratian Empire. We open with Luka and Kinuan seated in meditation. Luka struggles to stay calm, his thoughts restless. He tells himself that this training is about maintaining composure no matter the situation, but his mind wanders. Unable to stay silent, he calls out to his instructor. Could you tell me how you would have resolved the fight that broke out in the gang's office? Kinuan recalls the moment. He had actually told Luka that he'd explain this, if Luka won the fight. Back then, armed thugs had filled the office inside and out. Luka couldn't see a way out without a weapon. He was genuinely curious. Kinuan smiled in response and said, I would have ducked under the table when the fight started. Luka looked at him, surprised. Aleph and his men all had guns. If your first move is to hide, you'd lose any chance to attack. Kinuan knew Luka's mindset. He was trained to maximize aggression. He had probably already imagined how to take them down, even if it meant getting shot. Whoosh! But if you had taken Aleph hostage, Kinuan said calmly, you'd only have gotten yourself killed alongside him. Gang bosses change often. Taking one hostage just gives them an excuse to kill him. Kinuan explained that amidst that situation, he would have jumped in, taken them down, and escaped with Luka through a hidden passage. Luka began to think. Not only did Kinuan predict my actions, but he even knew about secret escape routes. He could not even fathom the scope of his consideration. Then Kinuan stood and spoke, saying, "In a forgotten language, arkies means keen eyes. Arkies Victima uses all possible brain resources to amplify insight." "Remember that," he said. Luka responded, "So the brain damage is a side effect of pushing your limits?" He paused, then realization struck. "If I equip the Legion, I won't be able to use the arkies Victima method, will I?" Kinuan smiled. "You really are sharp. I thought it'd take you a few more months to figure that out." The Legion was cybernetic. Once Luka became an Imperial Guard, he'd be granted one. But it drew on the brain to operate, leaving no resources for the arkies Victima technique. Kinuan had hidden that fact, knowing Luka would have refused to learn the method had he known. Luka clenched his teeth. "I'm such a fool." Frustrated, he stood to leave. "So this is how it ends, huh?" Kinuan sighed. Luka paused. "Thank you for your teachings, Instructor Kinuan." As he walked away, Kinuan called after him. "Come back when you change your mind, Luka." The scene shifted. Inside the office of Hemelles, the chief of the accratian Centaurium had called Luka for a report briefing. "It's been 3 months, Hemelles said. I've been busy and haven't had a chance to meet the trainees." Luka thought it must be because of the rebellion Ilay had mentioned earlier. Hemelles turned to Luka and asked, "How have you been?" "I've been training on my own," Luka replied. "I haven't been assigned a mission lately." Hemelles responded, saying that he wouldn't be getting one anytime soon. He was already capable of acting as a real force, no need for petty missions. Luka thanked the commander for the compliment. Hemelles pointed out that he heard Luka had been spending a lot of time with Instructor Kinuan lately. Luka raised an eyebrow as he realized this was the actual reason for his summon. He realized the higher-ups must have known everything, from Luka's visit to the lower sector black market to his participation in the Colosseum. Luka said quickly, "I've quit the training. I'm not learning from him anymore." Hemelles chuckled. "You quit of your own accord, right?" "Kinuan didn't dismiss you." Luka was stunned. "How do you know?" Hemelles continued, "You quit because the arkies Victima method can't be used with a Legion." He nodded slowly. "Impressive," Hemelles said. "Those who lack talent are thrown out by Kinuan. The talented ones figure out there's no point in learning the technique. That's why Kinuan remains the only user of that method in the entire Imperial Guard." Luka asked cautiously, "Do you want me to continue learning the arkies Victima method?" "Not exactly," Hemelles said. "But I want you to stay on good terms with Kinuan. And for that purpose, yes, continue the training. That's an order." Luka was confused. Why is the Chief Centurion wary of a retired soldier? But he dared not ask. That kind of question could risk his life. "I understand," Luka said. "I'll continue learning from Kinuan." Hemelles leaned in. "Keep in mind, Luka, I'm watching you closely. You're the type to climb high." Whoosh! The scene transitions. Kinuan stood in an old toy factory, inspecting parts. Behind him, Luka stood unsure. "I didn't expect you to return so quickly," Kinuan said, but he knew Luka would come back anytime, so he didn't push any further. "Thank you," Luka replied. Without resistance, Kinuan agreed to teach him again. Luka was overjoyed, but wary still. "Why are we in the lower sector today?" Luka asked. "Do kids still like playing with these dolls?" "I used to spend my time staring at these toys," Kinuan said softly. Then he called the owner, but the owner was nonchalant and rude. "Search for yourself," the owner barked. "You want something? Find it yourself." "I'm not looking for a toy," Kinuan muttered as he then requested every toy in the factory. Even the shopkeeper was surprised. Later that evening, they arrived at the 47th orphanage in the lower sector. As Luka prepared to deliver a box, a voice called out behind him. "Luka!" It was Gabriel, arms full of boxes, annoyed. Luka had asked him to help carry some boxes for him. Luka replied calmly, "They wouldn't deliver the toys here. You've been a huge help." Gabriel grumbled, "Yeah, I said I'd help. But Luka, I thought it'd be something bigger, not running errands." "If it were about combat, I wouldn't need you," Luka smirked. He studied Gabriel quietly. His new spinal implants had improved his balance. Looks like the money he spent wasn't wasted. Gabriel glanced at Kinuan. "Who's that guy?" Even Aleph backed down from him. "If I were you," Luka said coldly, "I'd keep my nose out of this, unless you want to lose your head." This must be the orphanage Kinuan grew up in, Luka thought. He's giving back because he survived. Children burst out of the orphanage, joyfully receiving toys from Luka and Gabriel. Then suddenly, they began fighting over the boxes. Luka didn't stop them, he just watched calmly. He believes that if you truly want something, you need to grow strong enough to take it for yourself. Kinuan called to him. They stepped aside to talk. I stop by the lower sector from time to time, Kinuan said. The pay they get here isn't much. But look at that chubby headmaster. Clearly, he's smuggling supplies. Luka asked quietly, "Did you grow up in this orphanage?" "I've long forgotten such things," Kinuan replied. He knew he would always drop by different orphanages from time to time as routine. Luka stared at him silently. He looks like just an old man now, a soldier who's lost his prime. His nervous system is wrecked from the overload of arkies Victima. Maybe that's my future too, if I even live that long. Kinuan broke the silence. Let's get to the point. The energy shifts as he narrowed his eyes. Who ordered you to come back to me? He asked. Was it Captain Hemelles? That's all for now, folks. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe as the next part will be coming out soon. Have a nice day.